For weeks, his tormentors assumed he was nothing more than a soft target until he made them confront their grave mistake. At Lincoln Heights High, the cafeteria buzzed like a wild, untamed hive. Students shuffled in long lines for food, clumped in familiar groups at their designated tables, and sporadic eruptions of laughter punctuated secret, insider jokes. Zaire Coleman lingered at the periphery, clutching his tray as he scanned the chaos, uncertain which seat wouldn't exact its hidden cost. It had only been 2 weeks since he and his family had moved to Brentwood, Tennessee, a town celebrated for its pristine neighborhoods, abundant school resources, and a community suspicious of outsiders, especially those who didn't quite fit in. At first, it was the simple snubs on the stairs, then the subtle, barely audible giggles when he reached for a locker beside theirs, and even teachers pretending not to notice when a stray book tumbled behind him. He had learned from years of moving with his mother's job that the easiest survival strategy was to ignore and carry on, but something about Lincoln Heights was different. The air felt denser, the stairs lingered, and then there was Austin Beckett. Austin, an undeniable football star who made his presence known the moment he entered a room, was the kind of person everyone either aspired to be or sought to impress. From day one, his gaze had locked onto Zaire. It began with a sly smirk and a casual bump in the corridor, punctuated by 2 words dripping with feigned curiosity. "Hey new guy, you don't fight, huh?" Zaire barely flinched. He recognized Austin's probing attempts, his deliberate tests of resolve, and chose not to play along. Yet silence was a language Austin despised, and his cronies agreed. Soon, trouble was brewing. Keeping his head bowed, Zaire clung to his unadorned routine: school, gym, home, nothing extra, nothing unwarranted. But at Lincoln Heights, invisibility was a luxury he could no longer afford. Murmurs twisted into mocking laughter, and what began as a casual bump morphed into deliberate shoulder shoves. By the end of his second week, his books had been knocked from his hands on 3 separate occasions, his locker maliciously jammed shut, and someone had even scrawled "lost" in permanent marker across his desk. It was puerile mischief, childish, senseless antics he could dismiss, but every time he ignored it, they seemed to intensify their efforts. One afternoon, as he methodically switched out his books at his locker, he heard their approach: Austin and his usual band, Ethan, Bryce, and Logan, the ever-present tagalongs who cackled at every feeble jest. Leaning nonchalantly against a row of cold, metallic doors, Austin drawled, "Damn, you must really love that locker, man, you spent half the day guarding it." Zaire didn't lift his eyes, he simply completed his task and shut the door. Unaccustomed to being dismissed so blatantly, Austin persisted, "Come on, you never say much, do you? Makes me wonder if you've got anything worthwhile to share." In a voice as calm as still water, Zaire replied, "I don't waste words on people who don't matter." It was a simple statement, neither angry nor aggressive, just plain fact, but to Austin, it was the spark to a smoldering flame. Ethan's low whistle, Bryce's muttered "damn," and Logan's knowing grin foretold the brewing storm. Austin's smirk faltered for a heartbeat. He wasn't used to anyone standing firm, especially not someone like Zaire. Stepping forward, he sneered, "So you think you're better than me, huh?" Zaire offered no reply. He neither flinched nor broke his steady gaze. That very silence stung Austin most deeply, for no matter how he pressed, Zaire remained unmoved. In a quiet, caution-laden tone, Austin warned, "Careful, man, you keep acting like that, and you're gonna make enemies around here." Zaire's unyielding look said it all. He felt no fear, though perhaps he ought to have, for the real games were only beginning. The trouble with bullies like Austin was their inability to tolerate even a hint of vulnerability, and Zaire's steadfast indifference had cornered him into escalating the conflict. It started with minor incidents: a spill in the cafeteria that sent Austin's tray tumbling onto Zaire's hoodie, a misinterpreted moment in gym class when a basketball struck him too hard in the face, and then crumpled slips of paper stuffed into his locker vents, scribbled with lazy threats and nonsensical taunts like, "Go back where you came from, you don't belong here, one of us will make sure you get it." Zaire discarded them without a second thought, unwilling to give Austin even the slightest satisfaction. Yet, when bullies find that their tricks fall flat, they often intensify their efforts. On a balmy Friday afternoon, the tension finally reached a boiling point. Fresh from an intense session at the local combat academy where he honed his skills nightly, Zaire stepped into the warm evening, duffel bag slung over his shoulder and his mind replaying every drill. That's when he noticed them, Austin, Ethan, Bryce, and Logan, casually leaning against Austin's truck in the parking lot, as if they'd been waiting for this moment. Zaire's reaction was measured, no shock, only a tinge of disappointment as he muttered under his breath, "Man, you really don't know when to quit, do you?" Austin pushed off the truck, his familiar smirk in place, yet now it was laced with tension instead of amusement. "You think you're tough, don't you? Think you're better than me?" he challenged. Zaire exhaled wearily. "I don't think about you at all." For a brief second, it appeared as if Austin might let it go, perhaps recognizing the absurdity of his own bravado, but then he advanced, shoulders tensing and posture shifting ominously, heralding the inevitable clash. In that heartbeat, as Austin's fist sliced through the charged air, Zaire's body moved on pure instinct, years of disciplined training igniting every muscle, react, adjust, control. He didn't merely evade, he slipped gracefully to the side, his foot pivoting with the precision of a seasoned dancer while Austin's punch met only the impenetrable knight. Off balance, Austin staggered forward, eyes wide with shock. Without missing a beat, Zaire unleashed a swift, controlled hook to the ribs, forcing Austin to recoil with a guttural grunt. Though his cohorts began to move, Zaire had already planted his stance firmly and warned, "You don't want this," his tone steady and resolute. Yet pride is a dangerous companion. Austin's face flushed with humiliation as he let out a frustrated growl and charged once more. This time, however, Zaire was ready. He caught Austin's wrist mid-swing, twisted sharply, and swept his legs out from under him, sending Austin crashing hard onto the pavement. A sharp gasp escaped Ethan, Bryce stepped back, and Logan's mouth dropped open as Austin wheezed and clutched his ribs in stunned silence. Standing over the fallen bully, Zaire felt not anger or arrogance but a quiet, profound understanding. "This was never about me, was it?" he murmured softly. Austin looked up, his eyes burning with frustration, yet beneath that blaze lurked a dawning fear, the bitter realization that he had never truly been in control. Zaire sighed and shook his head. Instead of feeling triumphant, he was overwhelmed by weariness. As he turned to leave, he encountered the others on the stairs. In a low, measured voice he offered, "You can all walk away from this right now, or you can find out just how bad it gets." Their hesitation, etched on their faces, revealed that the fight had already drained from them. Austin had never been the toughest in school, merely the loudest, and now the truth lay bare for everyone. Yet as Monday approached, a different kind of battle loomed. By the time the new week dawned, rumors had ignited through Lincoln Heights High like a blazing wildfire. Even before Zaire crossed the front doors, he sensed the weight of curious stares, stolen glances, and hushed murmurs behind cupped hands. "Did you hear? He put Austin on the ground. I swear he trains like a pro fighter. I wish I'd seen it." Though Zaire dismissed these whispers as he always did, some echoes were impossible to ignore. In first-period algebra, Ethan and Bryce sat 2 rows behind him, unusually quiet, while in the cafeteria Logan offered a quick, intrigued glance before averting his eyes. And then there was Austin, absent that morning, missing again in the afternoon and even the following day. When he finally appeared on Wednesday, he moved through the halls with stiffened shoulders and eyes that flickered toward Zaire but never met his gaze, his former arrogance replaced by an unfamiliar restraint. No one said it aloud, yet everyone sensed the transformation. That fateful night had shifted the balance of power at Lincoln Heights. Zaire hadn't merely won a fight, he had shattered an illusion, leaving those who once laughed and nodded in silent complicity unsure of where to stand next. Not everyone welcomed this upheaval. Zaire had never sought attention, yet after that decisive night it clung to him like a shadow. Those who had once ignored him now scrambled to speak to him, some even feigned a long-standing camaraderie, while the quiet few offered nods in the hallways as if witnessing him for the first time. Still, change wasn't universal. Austin's old clique, though no longer bursting into raucous laughter, continued to cast furtive glances whenever they thought he wasn't watching. It was far from over, he knew, but the true transformation had occurred within Austin himself. One afternoon after practice, as Zaire made his way to the parking lot, he heard footsteps behind him. Turning, he found Austin standing there for a brief moment, hands buried in his jacket pockets and clearly at a loss for words. "What is it?" Zaire inquired evenly. Austin exhaled sharply while massaging the back of his neck, and muttered, "Look, man, I don't know what you expect me to say." Zaire replied simply, "I don't expect anything." After a pause, Austin let out a half-laugh, a sound caught between scoff and resignation. "You really don't give a damn, do you?" he challenged. Zaire met his gaze firmly, his silence speaking volumes. For a moment, Austin stared blankly before lowering his eyes to the pavement. He wasn't ready to apologize, maybe he never would be, and that was his burden alone. After a long, heavy silence, Austin sighed and shook his head, saying, "See you around, man," before walking off with his shoulders still tense. Zaire watched him disappear, then turned back to his car, content in the knowledge that he needed no apology. Victory was already his. The next morning, Zaire strolled through the halls of Lincoln Heights with his head held high and shoulders squared, every step exuding quiet purpose. Now the energy around him was transformed. Those who once brushed past him now stepped aside, some whispered, others stared, and a few offered nods that conveyed more than mere acknowledgement. Yet Zaire sought no external approval. His battle had always been for himself. At lunch, he sat at his customary solitary table, content with his own company, when he noticed a small, nervous kid lingering near his space, a freshman perhaps, the kind once targeted for amusement by bullies like Austin. Clutching his tray as if it were a lifeline, the child's eyes darted about the bustling cafeteria in search of a safe haven. Without a word, Zaire pulled out the chair opposite him. The kid hesitated, then slowly took the seat, head bowed, eating quietly. In that silent gesture, the message was unmistakable. Standing up for yourself isn't about proving something to others, it's about knowing when to fight, when to step back, and sometimes ensuring that no one else must battle alone, for true strength lies not in how hard you hit, but in knowing you don't have to.